So we just crossed the 200 number here down there. I think we can start. Denise, I'm not sure. Should I just start, or do you want to say something, or is there any logistical remarks at the beginning that need to be made? If not, we can get going.
Yeah, you can go ahead, please.
I will.
After your speech, I will speak. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Let's do it that way.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So this is virtual coordination happening live. My name is Stefan Schweinfest. I'm the director of the Statistics Division of the UN here in New York, and I'm very, very happy to welcome all of you to this very, very special event organized by the IAEG SDG Indicators, dedicated to the 2025 SDG Indicator Review. Before I start, I really have to thank all of you because you are a very special group, the SDG Indicator Global Family, because I remember the early discussions, and a lot of people were very skeptical that we, the statisticians, would be able to put an indicator framework together and would be able to maintain it and would be able to report the data. And now it's 10 years, and we have done precisely that. I think we have kept our promise to the political community that we would be able to formulate the indicator framework. We did it very fast within a year after the SDGs were adopted in 2015. And we also kept the milestones, the review in 2020 and the review now in 2025. And of course, most importantly, we did the best we can to report the data in between. And we have created a narrative of this SDG, a Sustainable Development Goals agenda of the United Nations. And that would not have been possible with all of your contribution. So I think it's only fitting that we dedicate this third high-level side event of the 56th Statistical Commission, which is coming in a good week from now, to this important topic of the SDG indicator framework. We just conducted jointly this 2025 indicator review, which was mandated by the General Assembly in the original design. And we want to make sure that the indicator framework stays relevant and at the same time adopts to evolving priorities and challenges. The world is not the same as it was 10 years ago when we started this journey. But I think, as I said, this review process highlighted again our statistical commitment to this program of sustainable development. I'm very grateful that you, all the experts, were working closely together to maintain the difficult balance between stability. You don't want to change everything, but on the other hand, you need to update what needs to be updated to integrate new measures and at the same time, as I said, maintain continuity and also keep the number of indicators constant. I mean, there will always be a tendency to add a lot of things, but that's of course tricky because we all then have to provide that information. I mean, my dear colleague Yonggi Min, who is leading this program from our side, will be saying more to you. I'm also very happy that today we will share information on innovative approaches, doing what we do best as a professional community of solidarity, share our insights, share best practices, learn from each other, see what other countries have done to help us collaborate and move this all forward. I think this really characterizes us as a peer learning and professional global community. Now, we also have to look forward a little bit because we're entering the final stretch of the marathon. It's unbelievable, but it's already 2025, the last 5 years of this current development agenda. And we all know there will be a new agenda, and the statisticians will have to play an important role. So we're entering that phase where we have to reflect on lessons learned of the current agenda And I have already a couple in mind. I think there were far too many indicators. We as statisticians understand correlation. I think you really need a lot fewer numbers to understand where development in general is going. And this will be a job for us to do to convince the politicians that we don't need 200, 300, or possibly even more indicators in the future, because we all know how challenging it is to actually then provide the data. And I'm not only talking about developing countries, I mean, even developed countries having difficulties providing all that information. We also need integrated information frameworks because the numbers are all connected to each other. They are not standing alone. And I think we are working in that. And we need to make a clear pitch to the politicians that if you want that number, you need to invest, because good numbers do not fall from the trees. They need to be the result of solid statistical frameworks and capacity building, especially for the developing countries, so that we maintain the quality. So we have a job to do, not only for this review, not only for the final 5 years to report, but actually already to lay the foundation for what is coming after 2030. And that's why it is such a privilege to work with all of you. So thank you for your partnership. Thank you for sharing insights. Thank you for all your support now and in the future. I'm looking forward to what is going to be discussed today. And I turn over, it's my privilege, to Denise Cronenberg, who is the Interagency and Expert Group SDG co-chair, to moderate today's sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the high-level IAEG-SDG side event. My name is Denise Cronenberger, and I work at the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics. I am also one of the co-chairs of the IAEG-SDGs. Before we kick off the panel and the presentations, I want to remind you of a few housekeeping matters. Microphones have been disabled, so no one accidentally unmutes themselves. Please submit any comments or questions on the chat window. We will try to address as many of them as possible. This event is being streamed live on YouTube and is being recorded. The recording and any presentations used will be available on the event page soon after the event. The first agenda item is on the outcomes of the 2025 Comprehensive Review of the Global SDG Indicator Framework. Firstly, we have Ms. Yong Min, Chief of the SDG Monitoring Section in UNSD, to go over the 2025 review process and the final proposed changes to the indicator framework. Over to you, Yang.
Thank you, Denise. Let me share my screen. Just 1 second. Yeah, dear colleagues, thank you so much for joining this event. In this presentation, I will quickly share you the 2025 comprehensive review process and the final results. First, I would like to share what's the timeline the IAEG conduct during the 2024 for the 2025 comprehensive review. From January to June, the IAEG-SDG prepared a review framework noting possible deletion, replacement, adjustment, addition, based on the analysis assessment. In April, the IAEG have an open call for our proposal. And in May and July, the IAEG reviewed our proposal and decided on a preliminary list of indicators. In June and August, open consultation was held on this preliminary list. In September to October, the IAEG reviewed the result from the consultation and held additional consultation with international agencies and partners. And in October, at the 15th IAEG meeting held in Oslo, the group reviewed the draft proposal and made preliminary decisions on most of the proposal. in November, the IAEG carried out 2 additional virtual consultation and meetings and finalize the proposal for the 25 review and submit them to the Commission for its consideration at the 56th session. So I'm not going to repeat. I think everyone probably already said this many times. The 2025 comprehensive review was carried out under the agreed guiding principles and selection criteria agreed by the Statistical Commission. And one thing just want to emphasize is that the IAEG emphasizes on the grid methodology and also the data availability in the 2025 review. For at least 40% of data should be available for at least 40%. So let me quickly go through the summary from the open call for the proposal. The open call for proposal was carried out in April. During this period, we received 68 total proposal. And IAEG carried out 4 weekly very intensive meeting to review our proposal to decide on a very preliminary list to be included in the open global consultation. So the IAEG basically based on the 4 criteria to review the proposal: the methodological soundness, the metadata readiness, and on the data availability to check if the 40% data availability has been met, and also on the involvement of custodial agency. This is not a mandatory, but it's a desired. So here is the process. Among the 68 submissions during the open call for proposal, 53 proposals did not go to the global open consultation. Among them, 35 proposals didn't meet all the requirements, and the IAEG provided justification and the reason why it's not, and all public available on the website. And 19 revision proposals were shared with the custodian agencies and were addressed in a separate IAEG process, either through metadata updates, requests, or through refinements. And then 15 proposals went to the global open consultation. Among these, 11 eventually went to the final proposal to the 56th session of your Statistical Commission. And during the open global consultation, and the IAEG announced all this through USD website and social media, and also sent email to our master mailing list. And the IAEG provided all the summary for all the 68 proposals, and the rationale for not including or including some in the consultation. And for each proposal included in the consultation, the IAEG provide all the detailed metadata and proposal form. So a couple of important consideration is the IAEG welcome anyone provide comments during the consultation, but comments that are repeated, low quality, or irrelevant may be screened out. So not all proposals under consideration made it to the final list. The IAEG's final decision were based on the content of the proposal, the comments received during the consultation, and the size scope of the final global indicator framework. So here the results from the open consultation. During this open consultation carried out from the 15th July to 15th August, for the 15 proposal, we received 741 individual response. And for here, the list of how many response received from each of the proposal. So eventually one proposal was withdrawn, and it ended up 14 proposals. For the final proposal, at IAEG's 15th meeting, the IAEG reviewed all the input systematically and made an initial decision. And in November, the IAEG carried out 2 additional virtual meetings and consulted the custodian agencies and finalized the proposal. The final proposal includes 11 major changes to the current global indicator framework. 3 proposals for additional indicators, 2 proposals for refinement of existing indicators, and 6 proposals for the revision of existing indicator firms. So the total number of unique indicators in the global indicator framework will be 234 if the Statistical Commission approve it. Currently, it's 232. The IAEG noted that this proposal are not expected to significantly impact the reporting burden as the data have been collected for these indicators. Here is all the details. I'm not going to read them out because this included in the IAEG report to the Commission, which is available on the Commission website. So in addition, and during this 2025 comprehensive review, the IAEG also carried out a low data coverage indicator review for the data that have less than 30% data coverage in the global SDG indicator database. Among this, there are 2 indicators still currently have no data. The IAEG requests the custodian agency provide a timeline for data provision, and the data should be available at the end of 2024 and all the first half year of 2025. And there's a 32 indicator identified with less than 30% country data coverage as Q3 of 2024. And most custodian agencies have provided information on the following of the rationale for the low data coverage and why there have been little improvement over the year, and their plans and the timeline for filling in the data gaps in the near future, and the investment by custodian agency and country in developing and implementing these indicators, and also suggesting how to address and improve data coverage. So the IAEG decided not to delete any of this indicator. The IAEG commends the effort of the custodian agency and country and developer partner in producing methodology and international for these indicators. Also acknowledge the progress being made in data availability for some of the indicators, but also recognize that many of these indicators of low data coverage has proven exceptionally challenging for country to compile. Strongly recommend custodian agency take into account the practical difficulties country face in reporting on this complex and resource-intensive indicator. The IAEG also note if the data availability remain low by 2030, it may indicate that this indicator are either not prioritized by country or overly complex and costly to compile. So in that case, it's advisable to adopt a practical approach when selecting or developing indicator for the post-2030 agenda, including using alternative indicators. So with that, I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Back to you, Denise.
Thank you, Yang. We will now hear from custodian agents of selecting indicators being proposed for the updated framework. First is Mr. João Pedro Azevedo, Chief Statistician of UNICEF, to present the proposed additional indicator for Target 2.2. Over to you, João Pedro.
Hello, colleagues. Good morning and afternoon or evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. For us, it's a privilege and really a great pleasure to be here today and building on the words of Stefan and really celebrate as well the achievement that we have made as the statistical community in really filling this massive task of creating this global monitoring architecture that has been, in my view, extremely successful in spite of all the challenges. We're here to really emphasize the importance of to discuss the the agenda on the direct measure of diet qualities in the SDG framework, right? We all recognize that ending hunger and malnutrition is essential in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. However, our current SDG indicators really fell short on one fundamental area, which was the measuring of the quality of diets themselves. We know that poor diets are now the leading cause of ill health worldwide. Yet, existing global monitoring systems primarily track food insecurity and nutritional outcomes, such as stunting and wasting. These are critical indicators, but they do not tell us what people, especially children and women, are actually consuming. Without a direct measure of diet quality, we lack the data needed to inform effective interventions, predict deteriorations, and guide policies to promote healthier food environments. This urgency, in our view, is clear, and the recent global food crisis has underscored the fragility of our food systems, and climate change is increasingly disruptions in food availability and affordability. If we're serious about food system transformations, we need a robust, globally comparable metric that captures the nutritional adequacy of diets, not just the presence or absence of hunger. Part of our role as statisticians is also to offer measures that are sensitive to the shocks and crises that the world is experiencing. And here is where this work really comes in. The prevalence of minimum dietary diversity, or the MDD, for children aged 6 to 23 months and women aged 15 to 49 years is a well-established and scientifically validated indicator that fills this gap. It has been rigorously developed through 2 decades of research and interagency collaboration. It has already been collected over 110 countries through household surveys such as MIX and DHS. It provides a real-time, actionable measure of diet quality, making it a powerful tool for guiding nutrition programs and responding to crises. At UNICEF, we know that strong national data systems are the foundation of evidence-based policymaking. That is why we're still deeply committed to supporting governments in generating high-quality, reliable, and child-focused data. For over 3 decades, UNICEF has provided technical assistance to countries through the Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey, or the MIX, one of the world's largest sources of household survey data on children, adolescents, youth, and women. The MIX has been instrumental in tackling and tracking child health, education, nutrition, and well-being, and it continues to evolve to meet this growing demand for high-frequency, reliable, policy-relevant data. Building on this experience, UNICEF is working with the World Bank in the development of the minimum data package for children, adolescents, and youth, as precisely as an initiative to streamline and to standardize the collection of these core indicators and help countries monitor the well-being and development of children from birth to adulthood. As we approach this second half of the SDG process, we really have an opportunity and responsibility to strengthen the global monitoring system to ensure diet qualities are properly measured and tracked. UNICEF stands ready to support countries in adopting and implementing this indicator, leveraging our experience. Of course, this work builds on the amazing partnership led by several countries, led by Switzerland and countries like Malawi, Brazil, and Bangladesh, and partner agencies such as FAO, WHO, UNFP, and IFAD. And we really hope to take this proposal to the finish line and continue to work with member states on the monitoring of the quality of diets. Thank you.
Thank you, João Pedro. We will now hear from Ms. Clara van der Poel, Director in the Statistics Standards and the Data Department at UN World Tourism Organization, to present the proposed additional indicator for Target 8.9. Over to you, Clara.
Thank you very much, Denise, Stefan, Youngye, and of course, many thanks to the Interagency and Expert Group on SDG Indicators for this opportunity to share with you the proposed additional indicator for Target 8.9, namely employed persons in the tourism industry. Next slide, please. Now, the 2030 agenda puts people at its center, right? especially Goal 8 on decent work, does mention employment in tourism under its target 8.9 on the promotion of sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. And indeed, tourism offers employment opportunities for those entering the job market, for disadvantaged groups, for women, for unemployed youth, for long-term unemployed individuals, and for those with family or study responsibilities who need part-time jobs. It is through employment that tourism drives social progress, even in remote areas. And few other sectors rely as much on the beauty of its natural surroundings and on the warmth of its people. So to sustain operations, tourism has no choice but to be sustainable. And in a highly competitive landscape, this is a lesson that many destinations are still figuring out. But as they say, what gets measured gets done. Next slide, please. Target 8.9 is monitored by SDG Indicator 8.91, tourism direct GDP as a proportion of total GDP. Now, this covers very well the economic dimension of tourism sustainability and the target's focus on the promotion of tourism. However, there's a critical aspect, that of tourism that creates jobs, that is currently not covered. In addition, with the COVID-19 pandemic, employment in tourism emerged as a critical issue around the world. Millions of people went out of work and income dropped sharply, with dire effects on sustainable development. Like never before, employment was recognized as the principal mechanism whereby tourism sustains livelihoods, especially in developing countries and SIDS. The need for an additional indicator became clear. Next slide, please. The UN Statistical Commission took a series of decisions that led up to the proposal of this indicator on tourism employment. First, in 2020, it asked the Interagency Expert Group to improve the global indicator framework, including addressing important policy issues such as sustainable tourism. The next year, it requested the interagency to develop and test a methodology for indicators on sustainable tourism. In 2022, the Commission requested close collaboration with UN Tourism on indicator proposals for Target 8.9. And in 2023, a task team on sustainable tourism was established to develop such a proposal. Last year, the Commission expressed its appreciation for the progress made by this task team. Next slide, please. In response to the Commission, a collaborative effort was launched, led by the Interagency Expert Group on SDGs, and its task team on sustainable tourism, and involving key partners, ILO, CARICOM, UN Tourism, and the UN Tourism Committee on Statistics, led by Austria, Spain, and Saudi Arabia. UN Tourism conducted an analysis of the most in-demand indicators to track tourism sustainability, and then the Committee on Statistics proposed a reduced list of 10 to 15 indicators. Guided by this task team, a joint proposal for an additional indicator was submitted by Austria, Spain, Saudi Arabia, ILO, CARICOM, and UN Tourism for an additional indicator to be part of the 2025 comprehensive review. This indicator gained strong support in the open consultation, receiving 66 approvals out of 68. And at its last meeting, the Interagency Expert Group decided to include the indicator in the proposed changes to the Global Indicator Framework for consideration and adoption by the UN Statistical Commission. Now, this whole effort was closely followed also by the tourism policy community, including at its highest level, embodied by the UN Tourism Executive Council. Next slide, please. In short, the indicator covers all persons of working age with paid employment or with self-employment in the 10 tourism industries. Household-based labor surveys are the primary data source for this indicator, and the indicator leverages on existing ILO and UN tourism databases, making the most of investments already made at national level and at international levels. Next slide, please. The indicator also has an agreed methodology. It is rooted in the statistical framework for measuring the sustainability of tourism that the Commission endorsed last year. This framework, as well as its implementation, has been recognized beyond the statistical community and in various top-level policy mechanisms and intergovernmental processes. including the G20, the European Parliament, the Pacific, and the UN Tourism General Assembly. Next slide, please. Data is available in 61% of countries, covering 77% of world population. And this far exceeds the comprehensive review threshold of 40% minimum data availability, even across all world regions. Next slide, please. And depending on data availability, the indicator can be disaggregated by both sex and status in employment. And this naturally amplifies the analytical and policy potential of the indicator to better understand and tailor efforts towards more decent work and more sustainable development, whilst leaving no one behind. Because ultimately, what gets measured gets managed. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. Denise, back to you.
Thank you, Clara. Finally, we will hear from Ms. Silvia Montoya, Director, UNESCO Institute for Statistics, to present the revised education indicators proposed. Over to you, Silvia.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you very much to the IAEG-SDG and to the incredible support also to the DESA, the Statistics Division of the UN, who has been actually very instrumental for us to be able to present today. So I would like to present our proposal that it is in the proposal to the UN Statistical Commission to replace indicator 461 with an indicator that we have in education. I just want to call attention to the fact that in education, UNESCO has coordinated a governance mechanism for all the policy decisions in education, which involve countries and all stakeholders. And also in data, we have a similar governance mechanism with a thematic framework, which is having indicators which are aligned to the ones in the global framework. For this reason, this indicator is already in the measurement framework that we have actually as part of the AGRI framework, thematic framework, and this indicator on literacy. If we can go to the next slide. This indicator has is the ability to read and write with understanding of a short, simple sentence, what everyday's life. And it's basic literacy. It's just simple understanding, and actually in the way it has been measuring historically, this is one of the first indicators in the education since the 1950s, is an indicator which is in general measured as self-reported. And this basic literacy, though, is just creating the stepping stones toward further intellectual growth and actually the ability to read, to learn, and not just only to learn to read, which is actually the basic literacy. So if disaggregated, it also allows to see different inequalities, like by gender, by location, and to actually to promote targeted interventions that are actually promoting social mobility and economic growth. So I think there is a social and economic case for this indicator. If we can go to the next slide, please. The UIS is collecting this data through two mechanisms. The literacy survey we send to the countries, as we place a lot of value to send the data to the countries, to get the data and to then to validate. We collect this data every 2 years. And also we use population censuses, especially actually gathered from UNDESA repository and household service. And obviously we have some challenges because the data are not exactly measured in the same construct, so we have issues of harmonization, we have issues of frequency. Now, luckily, the censuses are happening in most of the countries, one per decade, but household surveys are least frequent and depends on, in some of the cases, of international initiatives. But still, we are able to actually to have a very good number of data, and we have details of the metadata that of the data that we're collecting, which is quite detailed in our data browser. So if we can go to the next slide. We have actually have a very good coverage of this indicator. Is the literacy for population 10 years and above, disaggregated by age group, by 5 years age group, sex and location. We have data coverage for over 130 countries, unlike the current indicator, which is having really very low coverage and is focused on basically on high-income countries. And we have regional and global literacy rate aggregates, which are estimated as a regional averages. And we have all these disaggregations that are allowing to see these inequality dimensions and to help to keep focus on policy. So let me go to the next slide, please. And thank you, colleagues. Just a very quick hint at the data. So it still is a basic literacy, but we can see that there is a good data coverage in terms of allowing us to build trends. And by age group also, we're able to actually to have a very good coverage in terms of the countries who are reporting, about 50%. As I said, the current coverage of the indicator 461 is below 10%. So this is a first message that data is available, and data allows discrimination also because values are changing. Still, even at the basic literacy, unfortunately, there are differences between regions and countries. If we can go to the next slide. And also we see that we are able to disaggregate by age groups and by SDG regions, so it's allowing us also to have this analysis. Given that this basic literacy, though, the coverage is lower in the most developed countries because the measurements that they have been carried out, such as the current indicator 461, are more related to service about the skills and management of a skill in daily life, which are more sophisticated, and the metrics of basic literacy is not taken as part of the survey. So we're working with the colleagues at OECD to try to see how we can come to a way to make an estimate and report for the Europe and North America. And if we can go to the next slide. We can see also that the availability of data by decade is really very important. So it is a very important insight in terms of the fact that that is allowing to build trends, is allowing to have disaggregation by sex and location, is allowing also to have disaggregation by age group. Very useful information from the policy point of view, and some of the cases that the colleagues previously has been making regarding employability and different aspects of insertion in labor and economic work. So if we can go to the next slide. So the rationale to have this indicator is as a prerequisite for sustainable development and social participation, employment obviously, links to improve health, gender equality, and poverty reduction. We are the custodian agency. We have a very good collaboration with member states, for which we are really very grateful over decades for data validation and alignment. The validation process is quite rigorous, and we do consultation with the national statistical offices. And the harmonization and adjustment, we're trying to do this as standardization in the different definition of metrics between self-reported and direct assessment. And the UIS has just signed an agreement with the center in Vienna, the IASA, who is doing population and demographic statistics. They have done for us the literacy projections in 2005, and now we're going to be extending these literacy projections for this indicator in the next year. And the idea is to try to have, on top of the data collected directly, a series that is harmonized and allowing to build trends and integrate it, as I have been hearing from Stefan, the different sources in the way that we can see trends over time based on experts that are going to support us in population and demographics. So the next slide, just to express again our gratitude for the support of all the member states and the stakeholders and the IAEG-SDG and the UNDESA department. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Silvia. Thanks again to UNICEF, UN, WTO, and UNESCO for their presentations. We will go right away to the next agenda item, Indicator Spotlight, Enhancing Data Coverage and Reporting on Global SDG Indicators. If you have any questions for any of the speakers that have presented, please enter them on the chat. I also invite the presenters to answer through the chat directly and then maybe elaborate further during the Q&A session after all the presentations are done, if time permits. I now invite the first speaker of the next agenda item, Professor Samuel Anin. He is government statistician of Ghana Statistical Service. He will share Ghana's experience on country-led innovations to address low data challenges. Over to you, Samuel. I think you are
Thank you very
unmute.
much.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great pleasure to be part of this conversation to share with the global community innovations by which we have instituted as a service to ensure that we report adequately on the SDGs. So I'll quickly walk you through the innovative approaches that we have instituted, but I think it's proper to just start with the progress that we've made with the SDG monitoring and walk through about 6 innovative interventions, and then I'll conclude by we having a conversation the previous speakers indicated, how we're going to expand the scope of the indicators to reflect the complex challenges that we have, as Stefan indicated. So on this slide, it clearly points to the fact that while progress was seen on a number of dimensions of the voluntary national reports in the area of the statistical analysis and annexes and data availability in the VNRs that underscore the evidence base for the SDG indicators, we've seen a dip between 2023 and 2024. Across countries that were engaged in this conversation, key issues that came up with this dip that we've seen in the last couple of years revolved around coordination within the national statistical system, issues around limited evidence in terms of data availability, as we can see on the last part of this chart, and the fact that countries are reporting, but they are not reporting disaggregated data, and also the usual challenge with human and financial resources. So Ghana would say that we've doubled our reporting in the VNRs as far as the indicators measurements are concerned. So since 2018, when we provided the baseline figures, we clearly see that we've doubled that, and we're looking forward to the 2025 VNR, where we're going to report on 140 of the 272 indicators. So I'll just jump into the innovative approaches, and I'm going to quickly go through it, but definitely we can engage in person on the materials that support our reporting on this. As I indicated earlier on, the challenge really is not about whether you are reporting or not, but really whether you are reporting in the dimensions as indicated in the SDG document. So here we are just leveraging data science tools for reporting the SDG indicator 1.2.2, which has to do with proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions. We would all know that behoves on countries to define their poverty and make sure that it reflects all dimensions and it's reported. Hitherto, we have reported the poverty from the expenditure income point of view, which was at the national and the regional level. But with recent advances, we found the need that we could leverage data science tools, especially machine learning, to do a report for all the 261 administrative districts. Again, the issue about data gaps is not really about its availability or not, but our ability to look at historical data. And if you want to measure something like the SDG 2, which talks about ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for all, you can only do that from a historical point of view, again, with the benefit of machine learning. And as a country that has been collecting data on the education management system in the last 25 years, we've been able to digitalize all this data from 2000 and provided a trend analysis on the quality of education as well as enrollment, and juxtapose this across different policies that have happened in the last 25 years to give government a sense of why we should look at education matters from a quality point of view, given the policies that have been instituted over time. When it comes to innovative data sources, I know a number of us are familiar with the citizens-generated data, mobile phone data, and data from civil society organizations. So in particular, with the citizens-generated data, following the Copenhagen framework, which has gone through a series of reviews, and now a number of countries are adopting, we have used the citizens-generated data to at least report on 5 of the SDG indicators, specifically SDG 5.2.1 up to SDG 16.1.3, that touches on issues around violence from the perspective of sexual violence, psychological violence, and physical violence that are suffered by women and children, either by intimate partners or non-intimate partners. So this is how we've gone with the use of citizens generated data in this regard. And lastly, we've been able to report on public experiences with government institutions, that is the SDG indicator 16.6.2 using citizens generated data. And again, going back to what Stefan indicated, and also in the spirit of the South-South Cooperation, this has been well documented in terms of the processes and experiences is being shared with a number of countries. I think just a couple of weeks ago, we had an engagement with Nepal on how citizen-generated data can be strengthened in the reporting of the SDGs. The other area that we have innovatively responded to the SDG indicators is what is being advanced in the use of mobile phone data for policy. So in this area, we are looking at SDG 11, which talks about issues around economic loss, GDP losses that are associated with displacement and disasters. Ghana experienced a spillage of one of our major dams, and that led to displacement. And again, this private-public partnership enabled us to see how we can see where people have moved to and how long it's going to take them to come back. And by that, we're reporting on the SDG 11. And the last area that I want to touch on is our collaboration with a number of agencies, including local and international organizations, to see how we can report on the SDG indicator 14.1.1b, which touches on the extent to which we reduce the plastic debris on our coastal fronts. So we collaborated with UNEP on this, and evidences around this have been published in the Sustainability Science Best, which ended up with the Sustainability Science Best Paper Award, again, to ensure that the way we're doing it is upscaled for other countries to do that. Just let me touch on another one, which is also on the SDG 15.1.1 through to 15.4.1, which again, through partnerships with the Massachusetts Institute and other international agencies and national agencies like the Ghana Space Institute, we've been able to report on our forest reserves, our water bodies that are being affected as a result of different activities, including the mining. So we've leveraged all these innovative approaches, right from citizen science through to partnership, that has allowed us to use mobile phone data and also geospatial data to enable us to report on the SDGs, not only from the perspective of filling data gaps, but ensuring that we are looking at historical data and also looking at disaggregated data. As I indicated, the conversation in Ghana currently is not just about whether we are reporting or not, but we are providing some reflections on when did we report the baseline, and in between the baseline and now, what has been the periodicity of the data that we are presenting. During the last African Statistical Commission, we organized a meeting between 5 West African Anglophone countries to look at SDG 2 from the perspective of the measure of food insecurity from FAO vis-a-vis measures of food insecurity that we've had from other international agencies like the World Food Programme, so that as African countries, we see how we contextualize the measurement of SDG 2, in as much as FAO is responsible for the SDG 2, we also have the opportunity of other measures, and there is the need to align that. And lastly, the conversation has gone beyond just aligning SDG indicator with your national data and the regional data, which we did around the 2017-2018. But since then and now, we've seen a number of national policies, sectoral policies, which requires that we go back and align the SDGs with this, especially at the time that Ghana has developed its long-term development plan at 2057, that conversation has started. So this is what we've been doing, and we are hoping that moving into the VNR for 2025 and the new proposals that are coming, we can further engage to strengthen the influence of the indicators on Ghana's development. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. We will now hear from a couple of custodian agencies on their efforts to enhance data coverage and reporting. First, we will hear from the Director of Statistics in UNCTAD, Ms. Anu Peltola, about measuring South-South cooperation for indicator 17.3.1. Over to you, Anu.
Thank you, Denise, Stefan, Yonggi, and IAEG-SDG colleagues and everyone else. It's a privilege to join you today and discuss the process towards first ever South-South data for Sustainable Development Goals, which we expect to report this year within the voluntary UN framework designed by the countries of the Global South for this very purpose. Next slide, please. When we embarked on this journey, there was no consensus on whether or how to capture the diverse modalities of South-South cooperation. The Global South is really a hub of innovation and mutual development, yet the absence of data has impeded strategic management of these flows, limiting their recognition in global development efforts as well. So this lack of South-South cooperation data was the primary reason why reporting on SDG Indicators 17.3.1 was never fully achieved before. Recognizing this, the IAEG-SDGs established a working group on measurement of development support, which soon acknowledged that guidance from the countries of the Global South was essential to define a meaningful measurement approach for South-South cooperation flows. In response, the voluntary UN framework for measuring South-South cooperation was developed, with India chairing the process and strong leadership from Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, China, Cuba, Egypt, Ghana, South Africa, and Tanzania. And the OECD and the Russian Federation participated as observers, and UNCTAD was invited to serve as the secretariat of that specific subgroup. At the 2022 UN Statistical Commission, then, countries welcomed this initial framework while endorsing the methodology for SDG Indicators 17.3.1. UNCTAD and the OECD were designated as co-custodians of the indicator, and the Commission requested UNCTAD to play a special role in enabling the measurement and reporting of data on South-South cooperation, including to test and refine this initial UN framework. We do also submit existing data on foreign direct investment to this indicator. UNCTAD, or the UN Trade and Development as we are nowadays also called, is honored to facilitate this country-led initiative. Maybe we can go to the next slide, please. So we aim to ensure a globally balanced indicator of development cooperation that includes South-South cooperation data that is measured in terms defined by the South, alongside traditional North-South development flows data, which has existed for a longer time. The first step in this effort was to identify which countries are involved in South-South cooperation and to assess their capacity and support needs. So we conducted a global survey revealing that over 60 countries required immediate support to start reporting South-South data and expressed their willingness to join this effort. Pioneering countries such as Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico have really played a key role in advancing this effort and engaging with other countries. The subgroup to the IAEG-SDGs working group designed and tested the first conceptual framework, and expert meetings that we then held in Brazil in 2023 and in Qatar in 2024 provided the platform to refine and start implementing this framework. As a result, we now have released a manual to guide any interested country to start collecting and reporting both financial and non-financial South-South cooperation data. This year, our priority is data. We are developing and testing data collection tools and building global information systems to facilitate reporting. A steering group of interested countries from the South is leading this effort, with partner organizations providing important support. Next slide, please. Last year, the first countries reported their data testing the framework, and confirming the critical role of non-financial flows in South-South cooperation. We are now transitioning from a global pilot project to institutionalized mechanism for ongoing support, ensuring member states can lead this process and fostering greater engagement through consultations and targeted events. The Doha meeting last year convened 66 countries of the South, and the next expert meeting will take place in the Asia-Pacific region this year. Additionally, we have found that online training workshops effectively can support national experts between larger in-person meetings. In 2024, the UN General Assembly's Second Committee called on UNCTAD to strengthen its technical assistance, data tools, and offer a country platform for collaborative methodology development in this area. And in response, our Secretary General decided to strengthen this work beyond individual projects to ensure regular assistance for South-South data collection and reporting until 2030, and hopefully beyond as well. We deeply appreciate the collaboration of our partners across the UN and beyond the UN. The UN system is at its strongest when we work together. UNCTAD collaborates here very closely with 4 UN regional commissions, ESQUA, ECA, ESCAP, and ECLAC, and we receive essential support from the UN Office for South-South Cooperation. As a co-custodian of Indicator 1731, we collaborate with the International Forum on TOSTI, hosted by the OECD, which is the source of the North-South data flows, so that we can ensure data consistency. Our regional partners, including Islamic Development Bank and SAHIB for our Spanish-speaking countries, provide really invaluable contributions and experience. Next slide, please. So our goal now is to extend this initiative beyond the initial pilot countries, broadening participation and refining practical tools for data reporting, so that all countries could benefit from common tools and manage the cost and burden nationally. As a latecomer to the SDG indicator agenda, we have had little time to step up this work, but progress is very promising. And this year we expect to provide the first ever data on South-South cooperation for the SDGs, a milestone that will enhance the visibility of the South's contribution to global development. And we have 7 to 10 pilot countries knocking the door with the next data submissions in addition, and further countries to join probably through the course of this year. And that's why I wanted to talk to you as well, to inform you that national statistical offices are key to advancing this work in countries with the development cooperation agencies. So building national data capacities is a long process. From initial engagement to testing data collection towards sustained reporting, each step requires collaboration, shared investment, and determination. This journey has been guided by a shared commitment to making the contributions of South-South cooperation more visible and promoting the exchange of innovative solutions, amplifying finally the voices of the countries of the South in development cooperation debates. Let us go to the last slide. And with this word cloud, I wanted to illustrate what has guided us and what is featured in our discussions in our meetings. It's about development, solidarity, partnership, data. This will remain a key guide to our future work and reflects well the words of Stefan at the start. Thank you very much. I hand back over to you, Denise.
Thank you, Anu. I now invite the last presenter for this agenda item, Ms. Angela Mi. Angela is the Chief of the Research and Trend Analysis Branch of UNODC. She will go over SDG 16 Survey Initiative to enhance data coverage. Over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Denise, and good afternoon to all of you from here in Vienna. And I have to say, I'm speaking, I have actually the great pleasure to speak on behalf of others people and our organization. So this is really a truly joint initiative with us, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, but also with the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner and the UN Development Program. And so I just wanted to acknowledge my colleagues with which really we work very closely: Alexandra Wild, Mariana Neves, Fatma Usheva, Nicolas Fazel, and Predrag Savic. That I hope, I don't know if they can go on camera, just because I'm really the spokesperson of this group, and we have thought about this presentation together. So let me tell you, maybe give you a bit of a background on the global of this initiative before. So next slide, please. And just to say that really what we really thought jointly is that we have this common goal that we just want to increase the availability of high quality data and research on goal 16, again, to help countries to make informed decisions. And I know we are here in a way to celebrate all the progress that we have made over the years since the adoption of the agenda. But let me say that all of us involved in goal 16, we felt particularly challenged, because it was really the goal compared to the others where there was not really an established statistical programs in general, in countries at international level. And it's also heterogeneous. There are issues relating to justice, to governance, to human rights, to violence, etc. So we really felt the challenge, but I think our partnership really reflects the understanding that is only bringing together different stakeholders and different areas of the statistics and policymaking that we can really advance on the overall goal. Next one, please. So here is just to say the list of indicators that we have on goal 16 and see the different custodian agencies. And you see that basically among the three of us, mainly we cover all, but not all. And we need to acknowledge that also other agencies are involved in some of the indicators of this goal. But again, here shows the challenge of looking, because many of these indicators did not exist, even as an indicator, isn't a definition when the agenda started. The next one, please. So here, just to say, we always, among, again, those working in this area, we always have the feeling that our statistical areas are particularly underdeveloped. And here, you know, if you see the availability at country level data for the different goals, you see that the SDG is definitely not one of the goals where there is high availability. There are other goals that maybe they have less, but you know, the availability remains. But what I think the good news is that we have increased, actually, even just in 2 years. We see that between the beginning of 2023 was where we had about 37% of coverage. Now we have more than 50%. So, you know, there is hope in the progress, and we are really determined and committed to really advance and support this progress. The next one, please. And here again, to also again, making the point that also when we look at this availability, of course, it varies across regions. But interestingly enough, if you see maybe other established area of statistics, you would always see the high-income countries showing higher availability and the low-income countries showing lower availability. And interesting here is that actually that dimension you see here that you know, Europe and North America, they have 41% coverage, and so they remain. So the gaps are not that you know, in a way equal to maybe other areas of statistics. Next one. So here, what is the SDG 16 survey module? So the way how we have developed over these 10 years, a lot of instruments and statistical standards that those of you that have been coming to the Statistical Commission may have seen, also presented to the Statistical Commission, approved by the Statistical Commission, so in a number of these areas. The idea of SDG 16 modules is actually to, you know, to develop a methodology that is survey-based that could cover the areas of SDG 16 that could be covered through a survey. And here I don't read all the areas because you have them on screen, but you see clearly also the diversity of areas, but also the comprehensive, you know, and the large coverage of the survey. And basically what we have done is we have collected and all the know-how that, that has been out there in official statistics, but also in academia, on how to use surveys in these areas. And we really have developed through also extensive cognitive testing and extensive consultations with experts and statistical offices, a module, a package with survey modules that could cover these areas. Next one. So how to use this module and this initiative? So there are different ways on how countries may use it. One is to use it as it is, as one, a survey, a new survey to implement at the country level. And so including all the areas. And this would be an approach that could be useful, particularly on countries where they don't have other surveys that cover any other of the areas covered in SDG 16. Or, this methodology can be used to update existing surveys. We have seen, for example, out there in some countries having maybe surveys that do maybe collect data on the topics, but they don't meet the metadata that we have in the SDG indicators. And so to use this methodology to maybe update where there is already ongoing survey, to enhance also this production and making sure that the survey can produce the data needed for the SDG indicators. To use also existing other survey and plug in different modules. Again, depending from the countries. One of the things that is important that for us since the beginning has been very important on thinking about this initiative is that it has to be clearly nationally owned. So it's not parachuting something and then to be used exactly as it is, but really to take it as an instrument that has already been gone through a lot of development that each country does not need to go through. But then, of course, domesticate both the language, domesticate the questions, to make it clearly fit for the national needs, but also fit to the national culture and context. Next one. Please. So we have examples, and you see here examples of where we have been working with countries in piloting this initiative and also now implementing, and as I said, particularly looking and matching this international approach with national need. Next one. So the survey initiative is one initiative, and it's not that we have developed a methodology and leave it there, but we really have made efforts together to train, to advocate for the module, and we had more than 4,000 people trained on the SDG 16 indicators. So again, as a free organization, we have been bringing together all our peculiar skills, our peculiar knowledge, and also our networks, because clearly SDG 16 is a goal that can be approached only bringing together different stakeholders. So from the criminal justice, from the governance side, from the institution, from the human rights institution, etc. So we bring, and very often we have brought also national statistical offices as to coordinate also those efforts across all of these stakeholders. But then we also, beyond just produce the data, we really have made efforts to make those data speak. And so to say, what do this data say that again can help advancing at international level, national level. So now it's for 2 years, we have produced a global report on SDG 16, where we have also, including input also from other agencies, but bringing, and we are now working on the third. So the idea is really to bring it all together and say, okay, what does all of this data mean, and what is the knowledge that this data bring? But also we really have made efforts in awareness and in presenting and making the points on why these indicators and this data are important. Next one. So we continue to work in improving the data on goal 16, and you see that we have some still methodological development to adapt the survey to fragile and conflict affected countries, but also to create a methodological guidance. In addition, looking, since now we started to implement it, we see also what countries need most, but also continue with the capacity development, regional trainings. We hope to have this year something with ESCO and the Arab countries, and also focusing in supporting countries on the implementation of the survey. You see here the name Sri Lanka, Mozambique, the Gambia, Ghana, Nigeria. These are countries, and again, as I said, we're working also on the third global report. So with this next slide, you see all the rich resources that you can access, and that can, again, statistical tools that can help National Statistical Office, but also statistical offices in online ministry to improve the data on SDG 16. So with the last slide, I'll finish. And and again, I acknowledge my colleagues in OECHR and UNDP for the great collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, as well as Samuel and Anu for the insightful presentations. Again, if you have any questions for any of the speakers that have presented, please enter them on the chat. They can answer directly in the chat and during the Q&A session after all the presentations if we have time. In this final agenda item, we look ahead to the post-2030 agenda by reflecting on lessons learned in developing and implementing the SDG indicator framework at global, regional, and country levels. First up, my partner as co-chair of the IAEG-SDGs, Ms. Kara Williams from Statistics Canada. Over to you, Kara.
Thank you so much, Denise, and thank you to everyone for attending the event. As Denise noted, my name is Carol Williams, and I am Canada's member to the IAEG and currently co-chair. I believe I'm also one of only 2 countries that have remained on the IAEG SDGs since its inception. So what I'm going to speak about today is based on my own observations since 2015 and even a bit 2014. So as you may be aware, the IAEG-SDG is setting up a task team to look at lessons learned, and we will document what we've learned. And we're doing this for a number of reasons. First, so the experiences that we've learned are not lost, and then whatever group comes after, the group that has some information that can perhaps help them avoid the pitfalls and suggest possible strategies to take in an indicator development. So I'm going to primarily focus on indicator framework development more generally and touch only briefly on reporting. So next slide, please. So why are we talking lessons learned now when there are 5 years left in the 2030 agenda? And that's exactly why, because there are only 5 years left. We need to look back to get it right looking forward. And the discussions have already started about what comes next. Is it going to be beyond GDP? That will be the next development agenda, or will we extend the 2030 agenda as we clearly have not achieved the goals? We developed indicators that are just starting to be populated, as Angela just noted, or will there be something completely different? It's not 100% clear at this point. However, whatever happens next, there are steps that we can take to make the journey a bit easier, or at least not face the same hurdles, because there will be hurdles. So we can go to the next slide, please. So where to start? Looking back on the journey of the SDGs, and please note, these are my own personal observations and not necessarily those of other IAEG members or of the UN entities or UNSD. To me, the best place to start is with those who will be responsible for whatever comes after the 2030 agenda, and that's the policymakers. So advocate for a seat at the table. This is really critical, not to influence what they prioritize, but to provide statistical insight and get clarity. For instance, there were targets in the 2030 agenda where many things were undefined. What is a small-scale food producer? What is sustainable tourism? What is measurable and what is not measurable? Being at the table will allow you to clarify. For instance, a discussion may take place about a topic where they're proposing something that is completely unclear. And someone with strong statistical knowledge at that table would be able to get clarity about exactly what they would like to see measured. For IAEG and custodian agencies, we spent a good deal of time on getting agreement on international concepts and definitions, and then developing the measures. And I'll come back to that a bit. I also suggest that you engage early with the international statistical system. I remember attending the first IAEG meeting and having no idea what the process was. Many of us from the member states thought that the countries would propose indicators. We had no idea that the indicators were proposed primarily by multilateral organizations. So it's super important to have that situational awareness, understand the objectives, the actors, and the roles and the responsibilities so that you go into it knowing what will happen. And so now we can go to the next slide. So how do you develop an indicator framework? And as this slide notes, the devil is in the details. For instance, the SDGs noted that it was country-led and country-driven. What exactly does that mean? For me, I thought it meant that countries would propose and determine the indicators, but that's not what happened. This is neither good nor bad, just the reality. So understanding these terms is important in the beginning so you don't go down roads that lead to nowhere. What will be the indicator development process? As I just noted, who submits the proposal? Who owns the indicators? For example, in the SDGs, we have custodian agencies. Do you allow for indicators that have no methodologies or data? These are the famous tier 3 indicators in the IAEG terminology. These indicators took a great deal of time to develop and even longer to have countries report on them. And I would note that while we've made great progress, there are numerous indicators that Yonggi talked about earlier with little or no data, which is perhaps not surprising, but nonetheless, we have data gaps. Finally, data flows. Early on, this caused everyone to be confused. I suggest you determine data flows early. The IAEG very early on proposed a single portal where countries could submit. That never happened, but there has to be a way to make data flows easier for NSOs. Now, here's where we get to some of the lessons learned that are really personal for me. First, you can go to the next slide, please. Developing an indicator framework is messy. Don't make it messier than it needs to be. How do you put guardrails along this? Choose simplicity over complexity. Indicators with 20 or 30 sub-indicators are not easy to communicate, and they add an enormous burden to the NSOs. Also, I will say, although we have 231 unique indicators, if we count the sub-indicators under them, so that's not all the series, but the sub-indicators, you're looking at more 400 or 500 indicators. So try to not do that. Indices, super easy to communicate. Who doesn't want to answer with a single number when you ask, how are we doing? So, are you doing well? Oh, we've got a 6. What does that mean? Indices mask the changes in the components. By design, they're subjective with the weights chosen. So you could have an index where the index itself is trending up, which could be good, but several of the components that might have lower weights are trending down. That's bad. So policymakers lose those early signals that they get from the components, which in the end could potentially mean that that index is going to go down, but they've lost those early indications. So here's my biggest takeaway. Stay away from the perfect ideal and bask in imperfect reality. I believe that we focused on the theoretical purity in the design of many of the indicators. New indicators that required entire surveys or new survey modules to populate. And I was certainly guilty of this in the beginning. We are now in a time of serious budget constraints globally. Most NSOs got no new money for the SDGs, and that was during a time of general economic expansion. And still, we all struggled. And as I noted, there are several SDG indicators that were developed which do not have much or any data. And as Stefan noted in his opening, good numbers don't fall from trees. It takes investment, and if budgets are tight and new monies are not available, then creating indicators that require investment is probably not very wise. So going forward, be practical, get comfortable with good enough, with indicators that may not match a target perfectly, but speak to the spirit of the target or the goal, that provide policymakers with some information as opposed to an indicator that is theoretically perfect, but nobody can report on it. Next slide, please. A few more considerations. Again, things that any group should consider and discuss when going into indicator development. We did not do this at the beginning, and we had to grapple with it later. Will you allow for modeled estimates? And if so, modeled by who? What models are they using? Do you get to validate the model's assumptions? Again, if it's country-led, country-driven, do you allow data from outside the national statistical system? What about citizen-generated data? What about an outside entity producing estimates for a country? What we learned during the SDGs is that official statistics alone could not be enough to populate all of the indicators and provide the necessary disaggregation to ensure we left no one behind. What about non-statistical indicators? There are many of these in the Global Indicator Framework. Should they be the responsibility of the NSO to coordinate responses? Should they be included at all, or could they sit separate? And finally, what about an indicator framework refresh? As you know, over the 15-year period of the SDGs, the IAEG has done the 2 refreshes or comprehensive reviews, one in 2020 and the other you will just have heard about, the 2025, and determine early on if you will do one and how open you will be to changes. We kept ours to a minimum so we could have consistency in measurement and not add undue burden to NSOs. We needed to keep the measurement as stable as possible. Next slide, please. All right, when you're setting out into your indicator journey, establish strong relationships and invest in these between member states, the UN entities, stakeholders, civil society, private sector, etc. These are your partners in the journey, and investing in these relationships will ensure a good understanding. Set up a governance structure that allows for good discussion, but ensures decisions are made. Leave the politics for the politicians. We are statisticians and should be concerned with the measurement. That's complex enough. Don't be tempted to bring in politics in what gets measured. Be prepared for pushback. The IAEG worked very diligently to develop indicators with our partners, but inevitably there was pushback. And sometimes that pushback came from angles we never foresaw. This leads me to my final slide. Next slide. Work in an open and transparent manner. Consult widely and explain your rationale. Having strong communication for the decisions that you make is key. It will not counter all the criticism, but it can help. Above all, remember, an indicator framework cannot be all things to all people. It is simply a snapshot of some areas. That is why there are other thematic frameworks that go into the details of a domain. Keep your framework as simple as possible, which will allow you to report on it, communicate it, and provide guidance to policymakers. And keep in mind the objective. The objective is to provide measures that enable us to make the world a better place. These are just my personal thoughts. As the IAEG task team on lessons learned works in this area, there will likely be many more lessons learned. And I know my colleague Renata, who chairs the UNECE Steering Group on Statistics for SDGs, is going to provide some lessons learned from this work. So thank you very much. And I'll turn it back to you, Denise.
Thank you, Kara. Now to present on key lessons from SDG in the UNECE region, I invite Ms. Renata Bilek from Statistics Poland. Over to you, Renata.
Thank you, Denise. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone from snowy Warsaw. So my name is Renata Bielak. I'm from Statistics Poland, and I'm also the co-chair of UNEC Steering Group on Statistics for SDGs. Thank you so much for the invitation and for opportunity to contribute to this important side event. So as Kara mentioned, I would like to present key findings from the review on lessons learned from Statistics for SDGs. This review was conducted in UNEC region. So let's start with findings concerning reporting on SDGs. Thank you. An important outcome from the review is that the nationalization of SDGs has been successful in most countries. Over 3/4 of NSOs have developed national SDG indicators, and about the same number have subnational indicators already available or in progress. But global monitoring is much more demanding. Even though we are past the halfway of the 2030 agenda, NSOs still face challenges in providing SDG statistics for global needs. Major issues that demand attention are disaggregation and data gaps, insufficient political support, and limited resources for SDGs. Next slide, please. It is clear from the review that NSOs have been challenged by SDGs. On the other hand, the global goals have sparked innovations in NSOs and fosters productive partnerships. As a result, the availability of SDG data has significantly increased since 2015. These are good news. However, NSOs admit they have reached their capacity limits and they need support to successfully provide SDG statistics. The most pressing demand made by countries is further guidance on methodology. NSOs also call for additional support in data quality and comparability, as well as access to new data sources. Next slide, please. Excellent. Okay, so now let's quickly review key lessons from NSOs on SDGs. In terms of measurement, NSOs admit that using existing national data and integrating SDGs into domestic frameworks boosts efficiency, reduces workload, and improves consistency. Regarding cooperation, we've learned it is essential to continue collaboration and dialogue with policymakers. An important conclusion for the future is that NSOs must have a strong mandate to capitalize on interest in the next agenda, advocate for measurable targets, and secure resources for data production. As for communication, it is observed that SDGs have increased interest in data and statistics overall. And concerning innovation, NSOs recognize that technology plays a key role, but it is not a complete solution. And we can go to next slide. To empower NSOs, the group working on the review paper prepared some recommendations. To put them briefly, we recommend NSOs to use guidelines and tools offered by the UNEC Steering Group on SDGs, to foster new partnerships, enhance communication, and embrace innovation. Looking ahead to the post-2030 agenda, a key finding is that the entire statistical community, including NSOs, should proactively engage in shaping the next global framework. We believe that early involvement in the process could ensure that official statistics play a sufficient role in the next policy agenda. And let me conclude by saying that all findings on lessons from SDGs are detailed in the in-depth review paper, which will be soon published, or maybe it is already published even, on the UNECE website. And I see that my colleague Monica just put the link on the chat. So that's all from my side. Thank you for listening, and it was a pleasure to being with you here. And back to you, Denise. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Now to our last presenters.
Denise, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I were on mute. Thank you, Renata. Now to our last presenters, S.C. Maliki and Ashutosh Ocha from India's Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. They will go over their role in implementing the 2030 Agenda and their vision beyond 2030. Over to you, Malik and Ashutosh. Malik and Ashutosh, please. Are you on mute?
Denise, I believe they're having some problems with their audio.
Yeah, I think yes. Maybe we can go ahead with Q&A session, and if they can at the end to present. What do you think, Kara? The next part is over.
Absolutely. Maybe colleagues from UNSD can see if they can assist our colleagues from India. Just looking in the Q&A, so there's two places to put questions. There's questions directly in the chat, and then there's a Q&A box underneath there along the line. So we have two questions in the Q&A box for Ghana. And I would ask that perhaps we take the question regarding the journey using mobile phone data, how it started, the challenges faced, and the measures used, measures taken to address those challenges and make it work. So, Dr. Inman, if you can take maybe 1 minute, 90 seconds to answer that question as best you can, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kara. I'm very happy to speak to these two questions. Let me highlight the start date for our engagement on the mobile phone data, which was really on the back of the SDGs in 2015. Decided to have a data roadmap, which is going to guide our engagement, with the SDG indicators. So in developing that, one of the things that we highlighted had to do with national data partnerships, not only within government institutions, but more importantly with the private sector. So that was when we initiated discussions with one of the three mobile network operators that we have in the country. Because it was the maiden engagement and the sensitivities around mobile phone transactions, i.e. calls and text messages, that journey took about 3 to 4 years until we started using mobile phone data during the COVID-19 era, where we supported government with mobilities of people amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The conversation has developed extensively since then. I must say that just yesterday we had a meeting with the largest market share of the mobile network operators, and they have already shared data with us, which is going to help us measure poverty on a quarterly basis to supplement what we do every 5 years using our traditional census approaches. The arrangement with these mobile network operators vary because of the entry point. With the first one, it had to do with a lot of infrastructure building to ensure the exchange of real-time data. But with the recent one that we engaged in, there is a quarter lag data, so it doesn't require that heavy infrastructure development and conversations around how data will be anonymized to ensure that the identity of individuals are protected. So they're all coming up very well, and we have developed 11 use cases going forward on how to use mobile phone data. The second question on the SDG 15, as I indicated, we're focusing on plastic debris along our coastal areas in Ghana, and this involved collaborations with both local and international organizations. Specifically, we had to work with UNEP to ensure that, because they are the custodians of the SDG 15 on the plastic debris along our coastal areas. We had other engagement within the country. For instance, we engaged with the Ghana Science Institute that has data on what happens on our marine front. And also we collaborated with the civil society organizations to help us pick the data on our coastal front. We also leveraged data science in this regard because we had countless classifications of plastic debris, and we needed to do the classifications as we do with ISIC and ISCO with over 1,000 categorizations, and this could only have been possible with new tools, i.e. machine learning, that helps us to do those classifications. Again, this has been published, as I indicated earlier on, and it won an award, so this can easily be accessed to further share the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our colleagues from India,
can we, because there is some problem, yeah, can we just present for 5 minutes only? If
absolutely.
Okay.
Let's get your presentation up, and please, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
So thank you very much, Daniel. We are extremely sorry, there is some technical problem. So anyhow, please share our presentation. Good. Thank you very much. So thanks to all the organizers for giving this opportunity to be here. So it is a great pleasure to all of us here. I am very much thankful to all my co-presenters and participants across the globe. Greetings from NSO India. I myself, Sri S.C. Malik, Additional DG, NSO India, Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation, along with my colleagues, Dr. Ashutosh Ojha, DDG, Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation, will be making a presentation on India's role in implementing Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and its vision beyond 2030. As all, you may be all aware of that India is a very vast and a diverse country, over 1.4 billion population. India is committed to implement the SDG by utilizing national defined indicators that align with its own priorities. Please, you can switch over the slides, please. Yeah, thank you. So it's one priorities and requirements. The Government of India has launched a series of nationwide welfare and development programs. The government's commitment to ensure Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Prayas is in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals motto of leaving no one behind. So now I am just going to begin with, I will give you a brief background of monitoring SDG in India at national level. Next slide, please. Yeah. Monitoring is a critical for the implementation and progress tracking of the SDG, endorsing India's commitment to implement the SDG while responding to the national priorities. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation has developed a national indicator framework for SDG in consultation with the concerned line ministries, departments, and UN agencies and other stakeholders to facilitate monitoring of the SDGs at national level. The NIF encompass the indicators that align with the global SDG indicators and also include those tailored to meet the India's specific needs. Periodically, review of NIF is done by the high-level steering committee on SDG, which is chaired by the Chief Statistician of India, Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation. The SDG baseline report was published in 2018. Thereafter, since 2019, each year, SDG progress report along with the two derived reports are released on 29th June. That is Statistic Day we celebrate in India. Next slide, please. Some of the annual SDG progress reports along with the derived reports are shown here. Next slide, please. Yeah. The latest SDG progress report along with the two derived reports on 29th June, as we told. Then the latest national indicator framework released on 2024 consists of 290 indicators, out of which data is available for more than 95% of the indicators. Most of the data for these indicators is sourced either through administrative records or national level surveys. Next slide, please. Next, I will discuss on monitoring SDG at subnational level. As you know, India is a federal country. So we have three tier of government system: national government, state government, and Panchayat Raj. So we are trying to implement the SDG at subnational level. The progress at subnational level holds a key India's quest of sustainable development. India's states and union territories have been given their continuously mandated role in implementing schemes and programs are the true drives in achievement of SDG. The importance of the subnational data in assessing the reviewing the results of national plan cannot be undermined. Next slide, please. Yeah. MSPI and Niti Aayog, that is a Government of India think tank, are closely working with the states and the union territories for localization of the SDG and providing technical assistance in preparation of the state indicator frameworks and district indicator frameworks for monitoring SDG at subnational level. In this endeavor, in 2019, the Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation formulated and circulated the guidelines to the states and union territories for crafting their state or UT level monitoring framework. The guidelines subsequently updated in March 2022 as part of the report titled Guidance on Monitoring Framework on SDG at the Subnational Level. The publication aims to support and help the state governments, union territories administrations in developing and enhancing their subnational level monitoring framework by offering comprehensive guidance. Next slide, please. It is noteworthy that out of 36 states or union territories in India, majority of the states or UTs have developed their state indicator framework, and almost all the states and UTs have prepared their vision documents and action plan to guide their efforts on the SDG. States and UTs have mapped the departments and schemes to SDG and the targets, and few of them have aligned their state budget with the SDG. Many states and UTs have also developed district indicator framework and block indicator framework. Next slide, please. India stands as one of the most diverse countries in the world, a subcontinent that is home to 1/6 of the mankind. Hence, country's success in achieving this SDG is crucial for global progress. India has been sharing its success stories and best practice in achieving the SDG at various international fora. It will continue to do us in a near future too. India will continue to support the countries in their endeavors to implement the SDG. India will continue to collaborate with the international organizations, countries to promote SDG implementation in this endeavor. It will share innovative technology to support the SDG implementation. I will stop here. The second part of our presentation will be taken by Dr. Asutosh Ojha. Over to Ojha sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Very briefly, I will just go through within 3 to 4 minutes. I will try to complete it. Thank you, Chair, for giving us the opportunity for presenting India's case beyond 2030. And to this August gathering, first of all, I will like to highlight this nation first, India first approach for data monitoring. So first question in this context comes to our mind: should all global SDG indicator be applied to monitor the SDGs in every country? Well, our immediate response would be no. But why no? Because the indicator used to monitor progress towards SDG may vary across countries, mainly due to differences in their priorities, resources, needs, data availability, among others. Next, please. Now take the case of India. As per latest report available, SDG Annual Progress Report, around 54% of the global SDG indicators are either fully or partially mapped with national and so it means the progress of India, and Mr. Malik has mentioned that we have 290 national indicators. It means the progress at national level is not only being monitored through global indicator, but also through national priority indicators. And in India, at different levels, we are having monitoring framework at national level, sub-national level, and also local level. And there also, while selecting the indicators, we are prioritizing the national indicators we are trying to include besides global indicators. So now what would be the next, please? What would be our next, please? What would be our plan beyond 2030? So next, please. So Government of India is aiming to propel nations to become a developed countries, Viksit Bharat or Developed India by 2047, which marks 100 years of India's independence. Viksit Bharat aims to make India a developed nation with economic growth, environmental sustainability, social progress, and good governance. And it also aims to ensure inclusive economic participation among all. And next slide, please. It also aims to develop world-class infrastructure, world-class roads, trains, and ports to increase digital connection and upgrade in urban infrastructure. And it is in line with the ethos of SDGs. Next, please. So what we are doing, we are just a framework is being developed for monitoring the progress of Viksit Bharat 2047, wherein NIF for National Indicator Framework for SDGs and similar other monitoring framework in the country are being considered. Then next slide. And here we are using the nation first approach will be used, just previous slide, please, for developing monitoring framework for Viksit Bharat. Some of the broad steps which we have identified, these are identification of key national priority areas theme for Viksit Bharat. We have already identified mapping of key priority areas with SDGs and associated targets and other similar frameworks. Also, we are identifying the indicators of national priorities to monitor the progress and identifying the national data sources and its periodicity. So, so my last slide, in conclusion, next slide. In conclusion, we propose that in alignment with India's vision of Viksit Bharat 2047, other countries may consider setting their own development agenda beyond 2030, taking into account their resources, needs, priority, and factors. They may also develop a country-specific monitoring framework with a nation-first approach to track development progress. Thank you. This is all from our side. Thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have gone well over time. I believe we're 20 minutes over, and so we will not have time to take any questions. I would invite our panelists to reach out directly to any questions that are in the chat and respond directly to that. But on behalf of my co-chair, the other members of the IAEG-SDGs, and the Secretariat, thank you very much to all of our panelists for their presentations. Thank you also to all of you who stayed on and for the entire event. I see we have 252 participants still, so that's excellent. A recording of the event will be made available on the meeting web page, as will the presentations. We would like you to attend other SDG side events throughout the 56th session of the Statistical Commission. And thank you again, and I hope to see some of you at the Statistical Commission. And with that, we'll close. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
ये हमारी साइड से था कि वहां से हुआ था प्रॉब्लम हमारी